It's Saturday morning and I've come down the farm just to see what's going on, have a chat with the farmers, a bit of a laugh, and I've brought out with me the Olympus OM-20, which I think is an underrated camera. I don't see many people talking about it either. Its big brother, the OM-10, seems to get all the attention these days. The OM-20, I think, was a much better camera. So this is the new film here from Film Ferrania, P33 film. I think it only came out this year. This was sent to me by the Little British Camera Company. They've got a stock of this stuff. And if you don't know about Film Ferrania, they're a film lab in Italy. They used to make motion picture film many years ago for black and white movies and stuff, and they've got the film P30, which is a cinematic or motion picture film for us to use in 35mm films. It's quite a contrasty film, that stuff. So I've got 2 rolls of this stuff. Hello mate. I've got 2 rolls of this stuff, one in the camera at the moment, which is probably 3/4 of a roll. I used a couple of strips to do some tests with some developer to see how I'm going to develop it later on when I get back, and I think I've managed to get it. So I've got 1.5 rolls if you like. Let's try a little bit of film flash, shall we? Don't need it, but there's black cloud behind him. Hello mate. Just wait for that right moment. There. Oh, he just turned. I think the flash went off. Back in the 1970s and 1980s, photography was booming. There was lots of these style cameras popping up all over the place, many different brands. And most of us at the time had those little tiny compact cameras which came out on special occasions such as Christmas times, holidays, etc. But there was a complete load of these sort of cameras that were around, and there was a massive gap between the professional cameras back in the day and the enthusiastic or amateur cameras as well in price. And there were so many cameras back in the day as well, different brands, different models as well. It must have been so confusing for the amateur or the enthusiast that wanted to get into the photography, didn't quite know what camera to get. Obviously the pros knew what they wanted, but not for the enthusiasts. They just had a look inside the shop and was going by the shopkeeper's recommendations, and probably their mates as well, but sometimes they were quite expensive, sometimes not. And Olympus were a very popular brand back then, not quite in the leagues, I don't think, of Nikon and Canon, but Olympus were doing their own thing with the OM system. And back in 1972, they came out with their very first camera, which was called the M1, and Leica got the ump, and when we ain't having that, we've already got the M1, mate, you can call it something else. So they changed it to OM1, and then the OM system was born. I think that was 1973, the first OM1 camera came out. And the OM1 would have cost around $360 back then. That's about £150 in the UK. When you think a weekly wage back then was what, 35, 40 quid a week, that was quite a lot of money, almost probably more than a month's wage to most people. So they weren't exactly cheap. And apparently it was the smallest SLR in the world. It was fully mechanical, totally robust, and the only battery inside was used for the light meter, which was the little popular needle back then. And in 1975, Olympus released the OM2, which was an electronic shutter camera, and it also had their new metering system, which was called off the film metering, or OTF for short, which was quite revolutionary at the time. And Nikon had the FE camera, which was an aperture priority camera, and Canon had the AE1, which was also an aperture priority camera as well. And at the time, the OM10 was lighter, it was smaller, and it was cheaper, and it appealed to a lot of enthusiasts and amateurs. And don't forget, the brand Olympus had already made its name with the OM1 and OM2 as being good, strong cameras. Except those cameras already had a shutter speed selector. For the OM10, you needed an accessory. And in 1983, Olympus released the OM-20, which was pretty much the same as the OM-10. The only thing is they did away with the shutter speed adapter, so you don't need that because this camera has got shutter speeds built in. You can see them on the lens mount there. That's where the shutter speeds are. And they also included an exposure indicator inside the viewfinder, which tells you if you're overexposed. And also Olympus added this tiny little grip as well, which I think you can change. I'm not sure if you could get different grips, but there's this little tiny grip on it as well, making it a little bit easier to hold. And I think at the time Olympus concentrated more on compact cameras. They had a lot of compact cameras going on throughout the 80s and 90s, very good compact cameras as well. They also concentrated more on their professional camera, which was the Olympus OM4, which had a couple of different variants, I think. And then they came out with an Olympus 707, which I don't know if anyone's got this camera, but to me it looks a little bit ghastly. I've never had one before. And then they finally produced the OM2000, which ran on to the end of the 2000s, and that was it. The Olympus OM system finished. I've actually brought it back now as digital, but we're talking about film here. But it's interesting to see why this camera is underrated and people prefer the OM-10 as opposed to the OM-20 when it's the same camera, but this actually does more. I've got two lenses for this camera. I've got a 28mm lens and a 50mm lens as well. I've also got the bellows extension so I can do macro photography, and I've also got the T20 flash for it. So I've got a nice little Olympus kit that I use quite often, I would say. I'm going to put the close-up filter onto the lens and do a few shots on this quad bike. I've got the 28mm lens on. I'm going to use that and then swap over to the 50mm lens and see what we get with that. I think we'll put the flash on this one, see what the fill-in flash will do, because I'm only running at 1/8 of a second at 5.6. I think the flash went off. So I'm just changing lenses at the moment. There's loads of these lenses around online and they're relatively cheap as well. I'm just turning over to a 50mm lens. It'll give me 1.8, a little bit more light to play with. But there's loads of these lenses online and they're very, very good lenses as well. Zuiko lenses, back in the day they were well regarded with this Olympus system. So also don't forget guys, I'm trying out this Film Ferrania film. I did try it in my last video with the Nikon F3 and they came out okay, but this time I've done some development tests with it, and today is a more sunnier day, so I'm hoping to get a bit more contrast, although it's starting to cloud over now. Bloody weather. So 1/60th of a second now, that's a little bit better, and I'm really close up on those dials too. An old Halford's oil can. That might make a good picture, eh? Blimey, that must be 1960s, 70s. Found this old Subaru four-wheel drive. Looks like a little pickup or something. So the reason I got this camera is because I got lent an OM-10 for the channel to try out and show you guys. I'll put a link to that video in the description if you want to see it. And I thought, wow, what an amazing camera. I'd never used the Olympus cameras before at all. So when I come to looking for a camera, I stumbled across the OM-20, did a bit of research, and I thought that might be a better option because I didn't need the shutter adapter for the camera, and it was a bit more modern as well, and it was a bit cheaper too. So I went for the OM-20, and this one cost me about 70 or 80 pounds at the time. I'm going back about 3 years ago. And you know, beware on eBay and stuff when you buy cameras. This was description was mint condition, everything works, blah 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 blah. True to the point, it was in mint condition, very nice condition, but the timer didn't work, and I thought, oh no, the timer's not working. So I contacted the person and let them know that the timer weren't working, and they was very apologetic. They said, look, we'll give you a refund. I said, no, don't worry. I said, but I just want to let you know, if you're selling cameras, I'm nearly falling over, if you're selling cameras, make sure that, you know, if you describe them as working condition, make sure they are, because, you know, people can get a little bit ripped off. But anyway, the timer didn't work, and it still doesn't now. And also I noticed that the light meter was a little bit off. So using the compensation dial, I'm needing to go to +1 for my compensation, because the meter is reading a little bit under than it should be. I've got LR44 batteries in here, which says that that's what it should have. It even says LR44 on the battery case. So they're the two batteries that I've got inside, but the meter is not reading as it should. So that's my Olympus OM-20. I wouldn't say it's the camera that I mainly use. It's a camera that I enjoy shooting now and again, mainly because of the light meter issue that I've got. I like putting my cameras into aperture priority mode, and if the light meter's banging on that camera, I can get some cracking exposures. With this one, the light meter's just a little bit jittery. So maybe it needs a little bit of TLC. I'm not sure. Let me know in the comments. Does it need different batteries? It does say LR44 on the bottom. But other than that, they're fantastic cameras if you can get yourself a mint one where it's all tickety-boo and working, your light meter's working, or if you don't even need a light meter, these cameras are fantastic and inexpensive as well. Why they're underrated over the OM-10, I just think the OM-10 has had a lot of limelight over the years. And it is a classic camera. When they brought out the OM-20, I don't know what they thought about it back in the day, but I can only imagine they was happy that they put shutter speeds in the camera, which was basically the same as the OM-10. What do I think of the P33 Ferrania film? I think it's great when these companies are coming out with new emulsions. This isn't a rebrand or nothing like that. Ferrania have got their own plant out in Italy and they're doing their own stuff. Some of the photographs that I showed were quite contrasty. I developed those on a rotary processor in a new developer that I'm trying out at the moment. And it does say it's for best results, hand process. So I put them on a rotary processor and I did notice, I'll show you the negatives now, that they were quite contrasty, really bags of contrast in there. And I thought, crikey, this is nuts. As you can see, this is the film that I rotary processed, and this is the one that I did in versions with my hands. And you can see the top one's much more contrastier, almost really thin, especially that spring shot, and the Halford's oil can as well. But my second roll seemed to come out a lot better when I hand processed it rather than use the rotary processor. So that's something maybe you guys, if you get this film, you might want to experiment with. If you use rotary processors, just take precaution that you might not get detail as I have on this bottom line here. They do say shoot it at 160, what it says on the box. They say don't muck around with it, just shoot it at 160. The P30 is an 80 ISO film, so whether they've done some emulsion stuff from that one onto this one, I don't know, but it is Ferrania's new P33 films, and it's always quite exciting when new films come out for us to try. It's about 10 or 11 pounds a roll. What's that, $12, $13 I suppose. And if you're used to a film at the moment, FP4, HP5, whatever it might be, Foamer Pan 400, whatever, and you're getting fantastic results, I'd always suggest sticking with that film unless you want to try something new. So let us know in the comments, guys, if any of you have shot this Ferrania P33 film yet. If you have, what's your experiences with it? If you've shot the P30, is it similar? Do you find it a similar sort of film? And also let me know in the comments if you use the OM-20 as well, or if you've got the OM-10 or any of the Olympus OM series, especially if you bought one back in the day. If you bought an OM-20 rather than an OM-10, why did you buy the OM-20 over the OM-10 back at the time? It's always interesting to hear people with experience from back then telling us now what was going on back in the day. So if you've got any experience with the OM system back in the 80s, 70s or 80s, let us know in the comments. I'd love to hear it. I'm sure others would as well. I hope you enjoyed the video, guys. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.